You guys, it has been entirely too long since I've said these words. I just spent some money on a camera. Now, for a really long time, I used this camera. It's the Panasonic LX10 as my primary vlogging camera. Has a little flip-up screen, 4K video, which I actually didn't use, f1.4 lens, but it didn't have a whole lot in terms of zoom range. And the f1.4 was primarily because Panasonic doesn't do terribly well in low light, so they had to kind of compensate for that. But on a vacation, probably a year ago, I dropped and damaged this camera. It does still work, but the front ring doesn't really turn. Repairable, but I'm treating this as a really good excuse to segue into I bought a camera. So today we have here in front of me the Sony RX100 Mark VI. Now I picked this one up simply because, one, it's brand new, just came out, but I've owned a couple of RX100s in the past. I had the Mark I, I had the Mark III, which I actually returned. Both 1080p cameras, both did amazing in terms of autofocus. The RX100 Mark III had the flip-up screen, which was really nice. The Mark VI has that same flip-up screen. It has great audio, stabilization, but it adds in a very long zoom lens. Now the thing that they lose on this one is the zoom lens is a little bit different in that the previous models, the lens was all f1.8 at the widest and it was f2.8 at the longest, and it was like a 24 to 70 zoom, 28 to 70 on some of them. This one is 24 to 200 and it is f2.8 to 4.5, which we'll see if that's going to be an issue in the testing process. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and open this up. I'm really curious to see, I know Sony was having issues with the RX100 overheating. I'm curious to see how that works, if it can do more than 5 minutes at 4K and all of those sorts of things. But anyway, what's in the box? As you would expect, just all the paperwork. A little strap, USB charging brick, 5 volts at 1.5 amps, micro USB charging / data cable, the camera itself in a nice little wrapper. Ooh, that definitely feels a little bit thicker there. 2 of these little additional holders that you could attach to the sides of the camera if you wanted to use a more traditional strap. That's kind of cool. And then the battery, the Sony NP-BX1 1240 milliamp hour battery, fairly common. I think this is the same one they've used forever. And of course, I've got tons and tons of them from my previous cameras. Actually, the same battery they use in the little action camera that I've got, not the RX0, the other one. So like I said, I've got a bunch of these and a charger for them. But then here we have the camera itself. We've got a little tag attached to it here. The RX100 Mark VI shows the 24 to 200 millimeter lens, f2.8 to 4.5, a 1-inch Exmor CMOS 20.1 megapixel sensor, 315 autofocus points, touch focus and touch shutter. Autofocus, it does 24 frames per second, and it is 4K HDR capable. I think that's also a new feature in this upgraded model is the 4K HDR instead of just 4K. Oh, there's also mentioned here on the back a 1-push access EVF. Not really been big on the EVF in the past, the electronic viewfinder, but maybe I will be this time around. Maybe I'll get more into photography. Traditionally, when I'm doing photography type stuff, I'm using the Sony a6300 that I film these videos with, but I could see using something like this. Something small, something very portable, pocketable. I'm kind of curious how pocketable this is going to be with this long extension on it. I mean, just comparing it to the LX10, yeah, I mean, realistically, front to back, they're about the same. The LX10 has a slightly thicker body, which means the protrusion of the lens on the Sony makes it look like it's a whole lot thicker, but like I said, the body is a whole lot thinner here. But anyway, I'm going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to get this all set up and working, do some test shots with it, and I'll come back to you and let you know what my early thoughts and impressions on it are, but we'll be back in just a minute. And we're back. I've actually used this camera, the RX100 Mark VI, a number of different times for just different things, but I thought I would give you just a quick walk around with the camera, seeing some of the different lighting scenarios around my house so you can hear what the audio sounds like in different environments, see how everything changes using just the program mode and movie mode. Then I'll show you some of the clips I took at a baseball game that I went to. But anyway, I'm starting out here in my home studio. There's a decent amount of bright lights in here, and they should be the right color of white to make skin tones look sort of natural. I don't have the main bright studio lights on, but this is just sort of traditional bright home lighting. Now we walk into the little downstairs basement living room area, very dimly lit, and as you can probably tell, it's getting pretty grainy. And that's the one thing I was kind of worried about with this, and actually, it's staying very red. I know the lighting in this area it's a much different color, yellow, white, kind of, but anyway. As we move on, you'll see, again, in very dimly lit areas, this does get grainy because it has to ramp that ISO up really, really high to deal with the fact that the lens is f2.8. But now, out in the bigger part of the house where things are a lot more open, a lot more well lit, the video quality should look a lot better. And if we exit the front of the house, you'll see that it actually does really well in outdoor scenarios. But For a $1,200, $1,300 camera, you got to expect that it will. And boy, it's bright out here. It did take just a minute for it to adjust, but I found that in outdoor lighting, this thing does very, very nicely. And realistically, in indoor scenarios, it has not really been an issue either. The one sort of complaint I could see about a camera like this is, as always, it doesn't come with any sort of microphone jack. It doesn't have any way to change the audio other than just adding the little wind screens that you can put on top of some of these cameras. But at that point, it's a little bit unsightly. The other real problem that I have with this, because I do so much video in selfie mode like this, is the screen. Everything in video mode kind of shifts down just because it centers it, but then part of the screen is actually obscured by the camera itself, which means I can't currently see what aperture I'm at, what shutter speed. So if I had this all set and it was automatically adjusting and stuff, I couldn't see what it is. Not normally that big a deal, because usually in selfie mode, you're probably going to be paying more attention to saying words and not necessarily what's on the screen, but it's just something I thought I would mention. Everything kind of shifts down, and I'm going to see if I can show you what that looks like, because it does cut off kind of an important part of the screen. Now, moving on to the baseball footage, as I said, I just took the camera to a minor league baseball game, took some video of the players in action, did some slow-mo video of the players, which was very, very cool. Except, even in the bright lights of the baseball stadium, it was kind of dim outside, but it was brightly lit. The slow motion footage looks really grainy and really kind of crappy. The first videos obviously looked a little bit better. The slower ones, the really, really slow ones here, they're very, very grainy, and they wouldn't really be what I would consider usable unless you were in like surface of the sun level brightness, and that would be kind of a stretch. So to go ahead and wrap this up before I go on entirely too long, this is not a review, this is just my early impressions of having used the camera. I do like the video and audio quality out of it. I do like the way that the photos look, even though I probably didn't show any or many in this video. It does, however, beg the question. The previous versions of the RX100 maxed out around $1,000. This one starts at about $1,200, and it's actually removing one of the best features, and that was the f1.8 lens. So is it worth that trade-off to get a much, much longer zoom lens, but one that is not going to perform nearly as well in low light? In my opinion, I would say that's a really hard sell. If you need that long reach, it's probably worth it just to have a 200mm lens in your pocket. But at the same time, if you're buying a camera this expensive, you probably want it to perform really well in all situations. This thing will perform really well, but it's not the absolute best that it could perform. So if you need the lower light capability, RX100 Mark V is probably the way to go. If you need that long zoom lens, this is definitely one of your best options on the market. I do have another camera that I've purchased that I'm going to be taking a look at, but it's nowhere near in the ballpark as this one, so be on the lookout. That video should be coming out soon as well. But thank you guys as always for watching. Hit the thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe to the channel for more, and I'll see you again next time.